Welcome to the Success in Africa podcast with Dr. Modupe, your weekly dose of leadership vitamins to make you successful in Africa.
Hello and welcome to the Success in Africa podcast episode 50. My name is Dr. Modupe Taylor Pierce, and I am a scholar and practitioner of leadership and organizational development. Simply put, I study what makes people successful. I have been studying this for 3 decades with a particular focus on people in Africa, and in this podcast I will share stories, lessons, and insights about people having success in Africa. Why this podcast? Because I am sick and tired of Africa being the poorest continent in the world. We are blessed with the greatest resource, young people. Africa will soon have the largest number of working age people in the world, and when these people achieve success, watch out. Africa's wealth will be unparalleled. Why? Because I don't know of too many Africans whose goal in life it is to die poor. You see, success in life is simply the achievement of a predetermined goal, whether that goal is owning a house and a car or creating employment for 5,000 people or transforming your country into a high-income country. This podcast has been created to help you to achieve it. So, if you are serious about achieving success in Africa, I want you to subscribe to this channel. If you like this video after you've watched it, please click the like button. This episode is brought to you courtesy of BCA Leadership, the largest leadership enhancement company in Africa. If you have questions that you want me to answer after watching this video, just log on to BCA Online, the link is on the screen, and post your questions there. That is where I will respond to your questions. Today, as we continue through the final month of 2024, we are focusing on our theme of entrepreneurship. This podcast places a large emphasis on entrepreneurship because even though there are other aspects of leadership, when it comes to success in Africa, we have learned that the greatest demand from people wanting to be successful in Africa is people wanting to know how to do business successfully in Africa. So, while I have explored other themes, I will continually come back to the home base of exploring tips on how to be successful as an entrepreneur. And when it comes to entrepreneurship, there are few countries more teeming with entrepreneurs than Nigeria. One of these entrepreneurs is a man who turns challenges into opportunity. His name is Ebele Enunwa, and he is the founder and CEO of Sundry Foods and Sundry Markets. His companies employ over 4,000 people, working in 200 branches across 20 cities in Nigeria. Sundry operates the Kilimanjaro chain of restaurants, 2 bakeries, a corporate catering business, and a chain of supermarkets. Ebele has been hailed by icons like Tony Elumelu as a role model for entrepreneurship, having achieved these heights when the company is barely 20 years old. However, his journey to success as an entrepreneur in the food and retail industries has been anything but straightforward. In fact, the biggest lesson to learn from Mr. Enunwa is the art of turning disappointment or setbacks into opportunity or prosperity. Ebele Enunwa did not start off wanting to be an entrepreneur. The son of a professional nurse, his mother, and a partner at PricewaterhouseCoopers, that's his father. Mr. Enunwa wanted to be a professional also in accounting. He wanted to follow in his father's footsteps. Unfortunately for him, despite his qualifications, his plans were shattered when his application to join Arthur Andersen, the other prestigious Big Five accounting firm in Nigeria at the time, was rejected. But instead of sulking and growing despondent, he turned his attention towards banking, specifically investment banking. and he found out about a relatively new investment bank, which his accountant friends talked about enthusiastically. He applied for a job there at IBTC, the Investment Banking and Trust Company, and was accepted. In a young institution, Mr. Enunwa's talent shone, and he quickly rose through the ranks. He was transferred after just 2 years from the head office to Port Harcourt, which at the time is a growing center of Nigeria's oil and gas industry, to head up one of IBTC's 2 new regional offices. There, he had to learn about the bank's wider business. He had to deal with big transactions, engage with business and political leaders, and see big deals being made up close, including the privatization of state assets. Enunwa noticed that unlike in Lagos, where, in Port Harcourt, there were few hospitality locations like restaurants and leisure outlets, at least few of them that were world class. People mostly had their meals at home because the eating places were, frankly, of poor standard. So he decided that he should do something about this, and he wanted to start a hotel. So he approached Hilton Hotels, the international market chain, to explore a management contract for a hotel in Port Harcourt. The group was interested, but the investment that Enunwa would have to make would be $15 million, and he did not have that kind of money. So he looked for other opportunities. He recognized that restaurants required far less initial capital, and there was also a gap in the restaurant market as well. So, having raised $1 million from his friends and family and his personal savings, Mr. Enunwa engaged international franchisors to buy a franchise and open a restaurant in Port Harcourt. He was rejected again by McDonald's, by KFC, and by Nando's. Eventually, he found a Nigerian franchisor who he engaged in a franchising relationship that turned out to be disastrous. The franchisor, even though they were well known, had a big name, had significant internal problems, including a legal dispute that diluted their focus, and they also had a broken supply chain that frankly made it such that the value they were offering to Enunwa really was not commensurate to what they were demanding. So Enunwa pulled out of the franchising relationship. He lost a bit of money in that process. Finally, he decided he was going to just launch his own brand, which he called Kilimanjaro, serving local meals at international food standards. The emphasis that he placed on quality and cleanliness paid off, as there were few places really offering this combination of international standards in terms of preparation and service with local meals in Port Harcourt. The restaurant offered dine-in, takeaway, and delivery services, and this fueled its growth and popularity. Kilimanjaro restaurants expanded to several restaurants in Port Harcourt and across Nigeria. Having experienced this kind of success in the restaurant business, Enunwa saw an opportunity to also offer some parallel services, specifically corporate catering services and also bakeries. These were natural extensions of the business, and they became successful as well. Right now, all of those businesses, the restaurant, the corporate catering, the bakery, all operate under the umbrella company of Sundry Foods. In 2013, Enunwa established Sundry Markets in response to a need for grocery retailing options. See, at the time, there were very few modern grocery retail shops operating at international standard in Nigeria. Frankly, the only 2 that were there were South African owned, that was ShopRite and Game. On the back of his success with Sundry Foods, Enunwa now had the credibility and the cash flow to attract the capital necessary to do the research to understand how and where to position his grocery retail vision. He observed and received confirmation that there were several synergies between the Sundry Foods businesses and that of modern grocery retailing. His bakery operations and prepared foods business were already, frankly, in competition with some of the grocery businesses, especially when they were both in the same mall. So he engaged an international firm to plan the stores. He raised $10 million in equity from investors by leveraging his entire investment in Sundry Foods. The first supermarket, Market Square, for under Sundry Markets was opened in 2015 in Yenagoa. This location, though not too far from Port Harcourt, was chosen because of its small size, about 280,000 inhabitants, and because there were no modern retailers there. It was a divine and strategic choice because Sundry Markets and Enunwa had a lot to learn about the grocery business. And this first store gave them ample opportunities to learn as they had to deal with several challenges, which could have cost them dearly in a bigger city. Sorting out logistics like power supply, air conditioning, refrigeration, coordinating supply chains and deliveries, handling pricing and pricing changes, especially in an environment where the currency is changing and fluctuating, handling cash flow. I mean, it was a steep learning curve for Enunwa. The good news is that because they were in a small market, they were able to do it without losing their shirts. Even training employees was a challenge and a significant cost to the business because the people had to be taught how to handle a wide range of products that a grocery chain handles. Now, the good thing is, unlike with Sundry Foods, where Enunwa started with insufficient cash and he was constantly having to struggle to raise the money and to use the money wisely in order to, frankly, deal with the problems. In this case, he had raised sufficient capital so he could solve the problems that came around much more efficiently with the right kind of expertise that was needed. Anybody who's been an entrepreneur knows what I'm talking about. Sometimes the lack of sufficient capital can be a real hindrance to not only growth, but to even finding the right expertise to deal with the problems that you may or may not have anticipated. Throughout this journey, Enunwa himself has not forgotten to invest in his own capacity as a leader in the industry. He has attended hotel and hospitality school to hone his skills in the industry. He has continued to grow his capacity for the business. He continues, by the way, to harbor the dream of owning a hotel. And at the rate that Sundry Foods and Sundry Markets have grown, I don't think too many people will be betting against him becoming successful if he does venture into the hotels. Mr. Enunwa's journey has been a journey of turning lemons into lemonade, seeing opportunities when setbacks occur, and recognizing that rejection is simply redirection. To be successful in Africa, your journey will likely not be straight. But if you persevere, if you open your eyes to opportunities, just like Enunwa, you can also achieve your dreams in Africa. Well, we've come to the end of today's podcast, of today's episode. I hope that you have learned a bit more about becoming a successful entrepreneur in Africa. Thank you so much for listening or watching. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel and like this video. Tell your friends about it. Together we can transform our beloved continent of Africa. See you next week.
Tomorrow belongs to those people who prepare for it today. See you next week.